Ladies and gentlemen, we are live. Are we live? We are live. Well, we were live on the arena. We were live on the arena. We're not anymore. There was an error. Let me see if I can restart that at least. Because that would be just a shame because it's showing it's waiting for my screen share. So for me to not be able to restream that. Yeah, it's been restopped. It's been stopped, so. Oh well, we're just going to continue on Twitter, on YouTube, as well as on Twitch. So it is what it is. Let me just grab the URL from Twitter so we can get started on getting the word out. Apologize for the dead air, guys. Have quite a few things to talk about today. So let's talk about what those things might be. The first will be something that I did some content on, wearing the taco hat, and let's talk about that right now. And that's going to be the situation specifically with G-Love. From G-Love, and well, he's an artist from quite some time ago. And let me pull up that screen so we can kind of see what's going with that. And so, unfortunately for G-Love, what had happened was that he got a new MacBook, Apple product, maybe a Mac Mini, and then he has a Ledger wallet that has all of his Bitcoin inside of it. So what he did was he went to the Mac App Store and he downloaded what he thought was Ledger Live for his Ledger hardware wallet. Now, he went in, recovered his seed phrase, because that's normally what you do. You get a new system, you want to have access to your information, so you put in your seed phrase and then you get going. Unfortunately for him, the Apple App Store does not have an official app for Ledger. There's one that's up there, but it's unfortunately a fake version of the wallet that's meant to drain people. The app has drained a couple $1 million at this point. Multiple people have tried to mention this to Apple, and Apple has not taken the app down. So the issue is like, how many of these things have to happen before Apple listens? Regardless, shout out to Bose Security on this. The best operational security, and we talk about this all the time, OPSEC, right, for having a hardware wallet is that you set it up in what's called an air-gapped fashion, meaning you never actually create your seed phrase while you are connected to the internet, because you can do that with the actual official Ledger Live desktop software. Is that you can create you can create your seed phrase, register your hardware wallet without being connected to the internet. That is key number one when you are doing this, because this is completely true. You will never need to enter in your seed phrase your seed phrase for an internet connected device. If it asks for it, it's a scam. Well, rather, to be connected to the internet. The reason why cold storage wallets are good in that way is because you can do it in an air-gapped fashion, meaning you're not connected to the internet. So, and that really is the only thing that Ledger Live does, is provides interface and also to interact with your wallet, but also to generate a seed phrase using the algorithm needed through what's called BIP39. It's just a dictionary with different words in it that help create, the thousands of different wallets that you're going to have. So the point that we're making here is, and this is the point that I made with my content, never trust a third-party app store when you are using electronics. Now, some of that can't be helped, right? So if I'm going to buy, let's just assume that these are earbuds. They're Sony earbuds, right? Let's just put it that way. You're going to go to the Sony website to find out all of the software that you need, right? You're not just going to go to the Apple App Store and hope that there is an app for your earbuds to not only just connect them, but to possibly tune them or customize them, like with an EQ or something like that. Same thing with your hardware wallets. If you have a Trezor, a Ledger, a Keystone, a Grid Plus, you're going to go directly to the manufacturer to get those software, or what we call firmware updates for the device. That's where you should be going. Do not rely on the Mac App Store. Do not rely on the Windows App Store. Don't rely on the Google Play Store, because most likely those are not going to be legitimate versions of the app. It's unfortunate that it's happened, but this is something that people have to understand is a real problem. And I get it. You should be able to just say, I'm just going to go to the Apple App Store to get the software that I need because it's on my Mac. That makes perfect sense. It does. But we're learning that they haven't completely done the best job at scrubbing some of these apps, right? Because we've heard multiple malicious apps that are out there. People that don't realize it. And this is another part with OPSEC too. It's like, this is why we don't like using mobile devices with DeFi to a degree. Because I know somebody else who got drained because they downloaded an app on the Apple App Store, or it was either Apple or Android, one of the two, looking for, it's a tool that helps you figure out where can I stream specific TV shows or movies. And it turned out that there was malicious code to actually steal from crypto wallets inside of that app, even though the app was very innocent. And oftentimes these threat vectors happen months, sometimes weeks, months, days, not instantly, that they'll go and drain your funds. So sometimes you'll hear about people like, I have no idea where all my funds went. They just got drained. And we don't want anyone to lose money, but please, and we've had some community members fall prey to this. If you go and get a new hardware wallet, never, ever go to a third-party app store to get your software. Always go to the the spot where you got it from. Sorry for the did it again. But yeah, we want everybody to stay as safe as possible. It is paramount that you stay safe. And I know it goes against like common sense, right? You're like, I can't believe that, people have to think about this. But this is it's absolutely true. This is just something that just happens. It should make common sense. If I buy a Ledger, if I'm looking for something for my Mac, I can just go to the Mac App Store to find it. It may even look like it's legitimate from the developer, but go to the developer's website first. So let's just say I buy a Ledger, right? Now their product is now called Ledger Wallet. It used to be called Ledger Live. It's now called Ledger Wallet. And this is what you're going to download. Now, this is the part that you should pay attention to. When it says download the app, it doesn't mention to go to a specific app store, right? If I go to download for either of these, it's going to send me the actual download. That's what you should be looking for. Now, in the event that they say also available on the Windows App Store, also available on the Mac OS App Store, that is different. Click the link to get the official one anyway, because that's what you're going to want. There could be some imposter apps that are out there, and you want to make sure that you're not falling prey to an imposter app. Just went over this actually during our community call for our Beacon Mastermind. My goodness, I had no idea that they had a new Nano. It's not the best price, and I'm not in Canada anymore. Fun. Well, it's showing Canadian prices for me, but anyway, if you're going to be buying a hardware wallet, make sure you get it from Ledger themselves. Now, you can go to an authorized reseller. Like Ledger does have an authorized store on Amazon. I think they also have one on Walmart. They do have third-party partners that they trust with their products with genuine stock. The reason I mention this is that there's also a Ledger Nano S issue with regards to Chinese counterfeits being found, and this is terrible. This is what we don't want to see. Let me see if I can find it. Yep, I have it right here. But I like this new Ledger Nano Gen 5. Is it worth $269? That's up to you. But I like the way that it looks, for sure. And it's, as you can see, it's half the size of a half the size of your phone. I'm trying to figure out what this button is over here. Interesting. Because we were just looking. Yeah, that's not the same. Wondering what that is. Some of these have a button here. Some of them have a hole. What's the difference? This one definitely has a hole where you would put like a lanyard, some type of leash on it. So 2.8 inches with a monochrome e-ink touchscreen, which is always good. Anti-glare coating. The one thing that you don't get with this is well, and I've asked this from the team every time I've seen them. Accessibility is something that I think they need to work on specifically. Where because in our group we have a lot of we have quite a few older members, or members who don't have the best sight. So being able to actually make it larger, so you don't have people like holding this and using a magnifying glass, it would be good to not do that. But yeah, always go from a reputable seller, or from like an authorized reseller, or from the company themselves. Same thing, regardless. And people ask me all the time, what is the best hardware wallet for me to use? And my first question is, are you using it for yield farming or just cold storage? If it's just cold storage, anything you want, as long as it's EAL 5+ certified. And that's a large majority. Things like Arcturus, things like Grid Plus, Keystone, even some custom ones. As long as they're either EAL 5+ or they've open sourced their hardware. These are things that you want to look into, right? That's my recommendation. Obviously, none of this is financial advice. Do your own research, but you want to make sure that you're in a position where you have a device that you can control. And again, once you get the device, always go to the manufacturer for the actual software. Now, let's just say that you buy XY wallet, we'll call it that, a hardware wallet, and they go out of business, but their stuff is still out there. The best thing that your device is unfortunately kind of boned. If there's no upgrade path, there's no way to maintain. Hopefully that they'll at least provide some type of portal for that. The best part about that is that your hardware wallet is literally the same regardless of the device. So you can go pick up a cheaper Ledger Nano S Plus, for example, or a Trezor Web or a Trezor 3 or whatever it's out there, and recover the seed phrase into that. Again, making sure that you always use software from the manufacturer directly and not going through an app store like a Mac app store, unless they specifically have an actual version out there that they maintain. That would be different. Either way, regardless of how you do it, this is also the best advice out there. Again, shout out to Bo Security. Unplug your computer from the internet. If it needs to connect to the internet in order to initialize your device, then it is not legitimate. You should be able to do what's called an air-gapped activation of your hardware wallet through stuff like this. So anyway, just wanted to talk about that. The reason being is that there is a, and I never even got the tweet that I was going to grab. There is a counterfeit operation. Shout out to Bitcoin News, and I know that a couple people have posted this from this subreddit for Ledger. There's a sophisticated fake Ledger Nano S Plus operation coming out of China with fake firmware and everything. So these are things you have to look out for. You definitely don't want any of this stuff. So make sure you always buy things from the manufacturer, from an authorized reseller, and hopefully you're not in a situation where you end up with issues like this. So or this is interesting. Brad Messier from Xcold Pro. I've never heard of this, but they eliminated the hardware dependency entirely. No device to ship, no supply chain intercept, no firmware you did not write. It's software, you pick the machine. I mean, I don't love that either, because what if something happens to the actual device? I mean, granted, if it's just a seed phrase, that's fine. If it's seed phrases, you can just move back and forth, and as long as they've open sourced this and it's not going anywhere, there's that. But again, the beautiful thing about self-custody is you get to choose how you want your hardware wallet to look, and as long as it stays cold storage and never touches DeFi, that's the key. Once you decide to start using it in a DeFi environment, that's where the recommendation to Ledger becomes the recommendation, because no other wallets support any hardware wallets outside of EVM that aren't Ledger. You can use a Trezor on Solana, but it's very limited as to what protocols, and maybe that's not a huge deal. If you're going to the Bitcoin blockchains that are popping up, or if you're going to Cosmos, or any other alt L1s, the majority of them, even places like Starknet, they only support Ledger. That's the only one that's supported. Now, if they start providing support for other hardware wallets, that's going to be different. But EVM, you have choices. You have Keystone. You have Trezor. You have some others that are out there. Most of them I think are QR based. It just kind of depends. We prefer the type that plug directly into your system, but it is what it is. Grid Plus, those all work on EVM. So you have choices. But if it's just going to be for cold storage, any brand that you want. Anyway, we're going to go into the second piece of today's presentation. You'll have to bear with me. Allergies. And we're going to talk about concentrate liquidity. Concentrate liquidity is, in my opinion, the best way to generate wealth using DeFi. The reason being is that you are profiting off of other traders and investors when you do things like concentrate liquidity. Now, people can talk about perp dexes. You can talk about prediction markets, spot trading, on CEXs and whatnot. That's fine. But that's a very PvP type of environment, right? You're competing with other specific traders. With concentrated liquidity, you get to, go into pools, that type of thing, and you're actually profiting off the behavior of other traders and investors. My opinion, a lot easier, because, you'll hear this statistic a lot. 95% of traders lose money. I just saw it the other day. 84 to 87% of prediction market wallets are not profitable. So why not look for a system that actually helps you stay in the green by profiting off the behavior of other investors? You have to bear with me. This is an older webinar thing, so we're not going to use all of these slides. Again, not financial advice, just don't want to put that out there. And the reason we don't really talk about concentrated liquidity in a lot of our free content is, frankly, it's complex. It's not the easiest thing for people to understand. It's definitely a more advanced topic, in my opinion, than just doing very simple single-sided LP staking or very simple LPs like the old XYK type, as opposed to concentrated liquidity. But concentrated liquidity can be very profitable, and it's my personal favorite way to do LPs. We'll talk even about different ways to do it, because I specifically like to do it in an automated fashion. To kind of talk about what concentrated liquidity is, it is an older standard that was brought out in 2021. 2021 is when Uniswap v3 first came out. Took a while for it to actually gain traction, at least 18 months before people really started using it. A lot of money was still in Uniswap v2 positions. The old XYK come in with 50% of each asset, and you play the supply match game between the two. And the difference is at least with the V2 style positions for Uniswap, so that bleeds down to Sushi, that bleeds down to Pancake Swap, and then everything that was a fork of those two. Traditional LPs. You would provide liquidity for the two assets across a fixed or infinite range of prices. Meaning, because of the way that the price hit the mic, because of the way that it worked, you're never actually going to hit zero or infinity along that price, but you're providing liquidity across the entire price range, which is fine. But it also yielded lower overall LP rates, right? Getting a high LP rate on a V2 style pool, definitely the higher risk for sure. What's great about V3 or concentrated liquidity is that you actually can do so in a much safer manner with blue chip assets. Pardon me. And the difference is that in a V2 style, you're providing liquidity across the entire price range between the two assets. In concentrated liquidity, you get to actually concentrate your liquidity between a price range between the two assets that you're trading. One fundamental thing to remember is that when you're in an LP like this, when you're providing liquidity across the entire price range for two assets, the way you make yield is there's two ways. The first is you're making a piece of every trade from one asset to another. Whether, let's just use ETH and USDC. You'll get you'll get a piece of every transaction going from ETH to USDC, paid in ETH, and then the other way, from USDC to ETH, paid in USDC. And it's a very small amount, by the way. You're not getting a ton of money, but this is the way for providing liquidity, supplying it to the protocol where you actually make a piece of all of the profit that's there. In addition to that, there may be additional incentives that can provide for the extra percentage points and yield that you would get. So that's the beautiful thing about LPs in general, is that you're leasing your liquidity to a protocol. They're using it to facilitate trades between two assets, and you're earning a piece of every single piece of that trade. Here is a quick little graphic that kind of outlines what that means. This is using, remember when BTC was 120K? Remember those days? This is showing you the idea that In a V2 position, if you're doing, let's say, WBTC and USDC, let's say on Arbitrum, for example, you would be providing it from 0 to infinity. The entire price range is your liquidity being stretched thin to provide access, or rather exposure to the trades across all prices, so that kind of limits how much you're making, because your liquidity is spread out across the entire price curve. Lower capital efficiency for that as well, right? But you're always earning fees because your trades are occurring across all prices. So that's something that's great to see. Uniswap V3. It's a concentrated liquidity position, meaning your liquidity is only active given to the DEX or available to the DEX within a specific price range, and also a specific fee tier. There are different fee tiers we'll talk about in a second. You do get a lot higher capital efficiency and range because, let's say I have $1,000, it's all in this range where BTC, USDC, the price between the two is between 109.5 and 114.5. That's just the zone that you want to earn yield in. And when it's active, because it is, we'll call it fairly narrow, there is higher fee collection. So you go from a range where you're earning maybe like 2 to 3% on LPs passively to I can earn between, like, let's just call it 10 to 200%, depending on what chain you're on. Sometimes if it's super active, because you're earning, there's a lot of trades happening on that chain. Again, you're earning whenever when investors are swapping between the two assets. So if there's a lot of volume, you're going to be earning more yield. And that's why with our group, we always tell people that they ask, why do we always push the same 6 to 7 blockchains? Because we fully believe that higher volume equals higher yield. So you want to be where more investors are. If you're looking to earn yield off of other investors, go where they're actually trading. Go where there actually is where the action actually is. Okay, so this is an example, CL, or constant. Well, that's how we're going to refer to concentrated liquidity moving forward, as a CL position. This is a USDC ETH position on Uniswap DEX on the Arbitrum blockchain with the 0.05% fee tier. What you're looking at here is an NFT, and this is an interesting, in my opinion, one of the best ways to mark a position is with an NFT, because it's non-fungible, meaning it's unique. It's not only do you have a min and a max in terms of these ticks, in terms of where your liquidity is being concentrated, but you also get an ID based on your actual, the actual ID of the transaction, or maybe even your user ID. And once this is minted, it's there forever. So as long as you don't close your position, this will always stay active. So one thing that you can do, and I think I talk about later on, is that if you have multiple positions set up, let's say that this is an ETH position where the price of ETH to USDC is between 4,000 and 5,000. Obviously, this was a little bit ago when we made this presentation, but just for an example, that's what this means on the 0.05% fee tier. And it's all about volume. As long as there's a lot of people trading on this fee tier using just using the DEX pool for this 0.05% fee tier, you're going to be earning as part of that volume. And again, the reason why we like this is because what happens when you first create the position is that they mint this NFT with all of the parameters that are about your transaction. When you close the position, when you withdraw all your liquidity and you close the position, pardon me, they actually burn the NFT, so it won't show up in your wallet anymore. In the event that you have a position that's open and you don't close it, like you still keep a tiny amount of liquidity in it and stays open, it stays open. So what's great about that is, let's say that obviously we're not at $4,000 ETH anymore, but let's say we go back to $4,000 ETH. If you never close this position, you can just go back to Uniswap and just dump liquidity in the position, and you'll be, earning as long as it's between 4,000 and 5,000 USDC per ETH. So that's kind of the cool part. So you can create what we call these traps. across multiple ranges and keep them open. Even with a penny worth of liquidity, it won't close and burn the NFT. So you have that ability to do so. Now, you can also do this on Solana using multiple protocols. The Orca, Radium, and Meteora are the big three that are the big providers of concentrated liquidity on Solana. There are others that are out there, obviously, but those are the big three historically. These are just some other examples of Meteora is a very interesting system. It reminds me a lot of, if you're familiar with what used to be called Trader Joe, or LF, it's now Let's Effing Joe. It's on Avalanche as well as Mantle. On Mantle, they've changed the name to Merchant Mo, but they use what's called the liquidity book method, where we'll go into that in a second. But you have the ability to have specific sized bins, how far away in terms of percentage from the active reward bin that you want to be a part of, and how many bins total are a part of your position. This is a much more granular option than just doing this, right? It's also a lot more complex. So I'm kind of going into some more intermediate thoughts. So if you're like, cool, this looks interesting, when you see something like this, you're like, okay, that's going to make my head spin. In a lot of cases, it does. But that also means that you have a lot more control over what you're doing. And I know a lot of hedge fund traders specifically that love using the what did I just do? What on earth did I just do? My fault, guys. Oh goodness, what just happened? Here, let me try and fix this. I literally went to go check to see if there are any comments. And it just took everything to absolute shite. If you have any comments or feedback, please feel free to let me know. Happy to let's see. There we go. I don't know what the hell just happened. Let's come back to here. There we go. I don't know what just happened. Let's keep going. Okay. So obviously this can be very head spinny, right? So you're just like, that's cool, Chris, but how do I make money? As long as the price between the two assets you provide is within your price range, you earn from every trade between both assets. That's a concentrated liquidity part, right? Because you're concentrating liquidity between $4,000 and $5,000 ETH in this position. For example, if you're in an ETH BTC position, you'll earn ETH for ETH to BTC trades and vice versa. You'll earn BTC for the BTC trade. What does that mean? That means A, you're earning off of all those trades, and B, you're going to be earning 2 reward assets for your concentrated liquidity position. And it's the 2 assets you're providing liquidity for. So if you're doing ETH BTC, you're going to be making yield, or rather fees, in both ETH and BTC. So what's great about that is this provides a very rev positive way for you to earn and hold assets you care deeply about, blue chip or high conviction assets. The early days of yield farming, where you went to like Pig Slop Farm and you were in an ETH BTC position, an LP, like a Uniswap V2 LP, but your reward token was actually not in either of these, but it was in Pig Slop Farm governance token or yield reward token. Those days are gone because those types of farms, which we saw so many of in 2021, 2022, 2023, most of those reward tokens just went to zero, right? So it was a race to the bottom. You were farming as quickly as you could, which back in the day, let's be honest, it was pretty good. But you were taking your reward token and quickly swapping them out for stables or whatever else that you wanted to in terms of profits. Now, people had full systems to help keep stretching yield as long as the price floor for that reward token held, but you were bound to that reward token, which in many cases was, definitely was not a deflationary token. It was a death spiral towards zero. It was just a matter of how quickly it would get there. Those days are over. Thanks to GMX and other protocols like it, where real yield was the new way to earn, from actual revenue or share of revenue, and then concentrated liquidity took over, and now you're earning in both assets, which is amazing, right? This is a great way to safely farm assets you have deep conviction to. Now, I mentioned a 4,000 to 5,000 USDC per ETH range. I can go much tighter than that, right? I could go 4,000 to 4,200, very narrow range. And we'll talk a little bit more about why that is very high risk in that case. And in general, why this can be a little bit higher risk anyway. And I'll tell you why in just a minute. But the key here again, the yield in concentrated liquidity is the fees that you generate, plus incentives. There's always incentives that are normally being thrown in. And the idea is that the longer your yield stays in range, or rather your range stays active in the active reward section, that's more fees for you. It's not just one trade that you're earning off of. That's why trading volume, when you see millions of dollars every 24 hours, you're earning a piece of each one of those trades. That's the beautiful thing about it, right? People ask, well, how soon do you get your reward token? In this case, immediately, because you're earning those fees every time that there's a trade between the two assets. Now, and I don't want to make this too complicated, so I'm just going to gloss over this. If you're curious about it, feel free to reach out. We have a ton of content on this to specifically talk more about it. But in Uniswap-based concentrated liquidity mechanisms, the range you decide to concentrate your liquidity into, so even if it's from 4,000 to 5,000 ETH or 4,000 to 4,250 ETH. Again, I'm just using ETH as the example. This works for any other asset that Uniswap supports. They take that range and they divide it into a specific number of slots. Generally, it's 100, and they're called ticks. The tick spacing is decided by the fee tiers. The yields are based on the fee tiers, which are decided by the protocol. The higher the fee tier, the more yield you can potentially earn compared to lower tiers. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, because it's not universal. If only it was, and it was for a while, until I think it was April 1st, 2024. No, April 1st, 2023, when Uniswap governance decided to remove the exclusivity clause for concentrated liquidity, and PancakeSwap was the first one out the gate, just I don't think 48 hours afterwards. And there's some other concentrated liquidity mechanisms that also were based on Uniswap that weren't quite. Algebra is one, and there were a couple of others that were out there that were being developed outside of that. But them removing that exclusivity clause made other competitors, come up. So Aerodrome, Velodrome, they use something called Slipstream, which is based off of both Uniswap and Algebra. And it's interesting how it all kind of works and how people are kind of doing their own thing. Now, if you're on Solana, they've done their own thing forever. Orca, one of the oldest that's out there, their Whirlpool contracts, which are kind of based on Uniswap, have been around forever. But Meteora, LFJ, they do what we call the DLMM, or Dynamic Liquidity Management System. And they use, instead of ticks, they're called bins. And you get to decide how wide the bins are. And again, this gets into complex territory. So the good thing about this system is it's much more granular, so you can control specifically how you want to space your bins within each trade. The width of the bin is from a reward perspective, is tied to the amount that you have in each bin. So wider bins are better for you to catch more fees, but having shorter bins, or not as wide bins, thinner bins, give you the ability to capture more of the range, I guess is probably the better way to go about it. Also, thinner bins are good specifically for things like stable or correlated assets. So like liquid stake ETH and wrapped ETH, or Kelp DAO ETH, EtherFi ETH, stuff like that. BTC and like Lombard BTC, stuff like that. When you have the liquid staked or the wrapped BTC or just correlated assets, it's good because those obviously they're very close in value, so you can earn. It's a lot more stable with that, so that's why the bins can be a lot thinner, because you have smaller ticks that there's not going to be a lot of variance between the price of the two assets. Gives you some interesting strategies, but we'll see. So in the beginning, Uniswap DAO had only 4 tiers. And essentially, this is how they looked. With fee tiers, 1% was for every volatile pair, I guess we'll call it. So if it's an asset that is not a blue chip, for example, when GMX first came out, GMX against ETH, that's a 1%, always for the most part a 1% tier, unless they start to gain a lot more in TVL, a lot more in volume, then they'll open up a 0.3% tier, moving downwards. Most stables are at that 0.01. Really good blue chip altcoins will be at the 0.3 or 0.05%, depending on how much volume there is. And the reason for that is these percentages are more that the user is going to have to pay to make the trade. Overall, now that we're in a world of aggregated dexes who are always trying to find the cheapest routes available, the dexes are always going to get more volume from users looking to save on what they're going to pay. So that's where the volume comes from. So they're always going to find the best deal for the user, basically. But all fees do go directly to the LPers. What's nice is that Uniswap, and I think some of the other ones now as well, they'll tell you exactly which LP is which fee tier is being used at the time when you try and create the position. And that's what you should go with. Why? Because if you choose a fee tier, and I'll give you this example. When the Arbitrum airdrop first happened in 2023, we had the ability to go to a DEX called Kyber Swap on Arbitrum, and they had like the regular 1% tier, 0.3% tier, and then they had 1, 2, 4, and 6% tiers. I'm like, oh yeah, let me get in the 4% tier. I'd love to make 4% off of every single trade that goes out. So I go and I put an insane amount in there, and I wait, and after like 72 hours, no fees at the 4% tier, because 4% tier wasn't being called on. Everyone was using the 1 or 0.3% tier on all dexes. So that's also something you kind of have to understand. There are some other coins on some other ecosystems that can use a greater than 1% tier for that, and that works out well. Those are kind of few and far between now, so something to consider. Don't have time to talk about like specific like Solana based ideas, because we have tons of content in our mastermind for this, but yeah, we've been able to fall asleep and wake up making a couple hundreds of dollars in fees off of 2 and 4% tiers on some of these more exotic coins. Now, those days are kind of gone, to be honest, but they're still available depending on what you're looking for. But yeah, that's why concentrated liquidity is one of our favorite things to do, because you're profiting off the behavior of other investors. Plus, you're also getting incentives and fees to go along with it. So, talking about some other nuances and how yields are paid out, Slipstream, which is Aerodrome and Velodrome, they now have 2 different columns when you look at their LPs. There's the fee, there's like the trading fee APR, and then there's the emission APR. 100% of fees from all trades on those go to the voters of those pools first. And then if you're in the active bin range, the active reward range, that they've set, you can earn, additional fees beyond that. So not that great, honestly. But in some pools, it's okay. You can get like 4 to 10% on fees. But the majority of them, like on our Beacon Spotlight, we always headline these two specific. It's ETH CBBTC and ETH USDC on Aerodrome on base, always above 9,000% APR. Why? Because all the voters, get a huge part of that. What that means is, at least on Aerodrome and Velodrome, you need to buy the governance token, which is either Aero on Aerodrome or Velo on Velodrome. Lock it in for 4 years to get full access to it. Because if let's say we only do 1 year, you only get a fourth of the amount of Aero that you're putting in to earn from. So you're locked in for 4 years. And is that such a bad thing? No, because frankly, that's what everyone does. And one thing that I can tell you about, ETH Denver 2023, right after it was done, Pantera, Coinbase Ventures, a whole bunch of people dumped millions of dollars into 4 years of locking Aero. So everybody else is locked in with you. So there's that. The Liquidity book does a different thing. Of course they do. But again, it's great for people who want that granular control, and in general, if you have a high leaderboard spot, you get additional incentives after a certain amount of time, what we call an epoch. Epochs are different for different systems. Generally for Slipstream, it's a week. Liquidity book, Meteoric can be a specific amount of time. Normally they tell you. Here's a key difference. Graph. Don't have a ton of time to really talk about tons of these differences, but just know that there's a lot of people using concentrated liquidity to earn from the behavior of other investors. So different systems work well for different types of coins. For me personally, I like Uniswap v3 and Liquidity book, but I'm more apt to use Uniswap v3, mainly because there's a lot of automated options for those. Not that there aren't for Slipstream, Liquidity book, and Meteora, but Uniswap's liquidity managers, the automated ones, there's many to choose from, and it gives you the ability to just kind of set it and then just forget it, because it'll auto rebalance your pools and auto compound the rewards as well. Do I do that with all of them? No. I have some and I'll talk about one of the strategies that we have here, but let's talk about this part because it sounds like it's all roses, right? It's not. So this is the part that can be very difficult. When you are providing, let's see, do I have it? Yeah, let's use this one. Let's say that I'm providing between $3,800 and $4,500 ETH to USDC. Because I'm concentrating within that range, my supply is 100% in that range. So if I put it in at the middle, so I'm 50%, let's just say that the price that I got in is directly in the middle of 3,800 and 4,500. That means the supply will immediately be 50% ETH, 50% USDC. As the price goes up for ETH, that actually will change the supply ratio, so it's more USDC in my pool than ETH, because ETH will be more valuable. This is very similar to the regular V2 style LPs, where you will have the pool will buy more of your supply and leaving you with less, depending on the value of it, to keep it at a 50-50 equilibrium. 50-50 equilibrium. The problem is that you don't get that equilibrium at using concentrated liquidity. So in the event that the price goes above 44.90, I will actually hold in my pool 100% USDC. So there's not going to be a ton of ETH for me in my position above 44.90. It'll be 100% USDC and no ETH. So there's that. But in the event that the price slips, suddenly we're going to have more ETH versus more USDC, because ETH is worth less in comparison. So you're actually going to earn more ETH and hold more ETH. This is why we call it the accumulator strategy. This is what we did specifically in 2022 and 2023 to really accumulate a ton of ETH and BTC back when ETH was down almost to 950, back to when BTC was almost to 16K. These are the types of strategies we were putting together. You know, we would take some USDC and put it outside the range, and then as the prices were starting to fall, our pools would just earn and grab more ETH and wrap Bitcoin. The great part about that is that it's not a quick or a sudden decline. It shouldn't be, at least, right? As long as it's rangy in that range, I'm going to continue to keep that pool while also earning fees. One thing I also did when I got my AR bear drop is that I took quite a bit of it and I actually wanted to DC out of it gracefully. So instead of just selling it on the open market, I actually put it into a concentrated liquidity pool with ARB and ETH at the 1%. And as ARB went down in price, because people were obviously continuing to sell, it would I would get more ARB, but the other way around was as ARB was to rise due to the popularity of people trying to get to ARB, I would actually earn more ETH in that case, and then just cash out the rewards and just cash them out to USD or cash them out to ETH, whatever I wanted. And so that's a good way to accumulate. That's why we call it the accumulator strategy. And this is something that a lot of people use concentrated liquidity for, and it's a really great way to do so. And there's multiple ways to do it. But the part I talked about with that 100% of owning one asset or another, this is what we call, this is definitely impermanent loss, which is something that people are worried about. But this is actually what we call divergent loss, because you actually have lost supply. So let's say, like I said, the top of the range, you have to be careful. You have to be comfortable with the idea of owning 100% of either asset in the pool based on the pool that you're going after. That is the part that you have to accept if you're going to go into concentrated liquidity play. So if I'm in ETH and BTC, let's say things flip-flop. Now, ETH and BTC are fairly correlated, so that's kind of something you won't see very often. But in the event that ETH either outperforms BTC or vice versa, based on BTC dominance, whatever, you could be in a situation where you have more ETH than BTC, and you have to be okay with that. This is why in these types of plays, you never use your entire stack, right? You definitely want to use a little bit of it, but not the whole thing. That's the other part too. But I would say tops 5 to 10% of your Bitcoin or ETH stack in a play like this. So you get to hold on to your BTC and your ETH, but you're working it, right? That's the idea. With DeFi is like the ability to work your assets to earn yield passively while you hold, while you wait for 20, 30, or however long you're holding your Bitcoin or ETH for. But this is a great way to work your assets and earn yield on it over time. Now, the good part, and let's just call it the good part. If you're worried about either losing too much supply or gaining too much supply in the other direction, once you are out of range, meaning that your price range is no longer the actual price between the two assets, let's say that, like for example, right now, the price of ETH is at $2,400. Way below this, right? The moment that you fall out of range, you are no longer earning fees. Because you're not providing liquidity in the range that the DEX has. So that's something to look at, because when we talk about what we call our trap strategy, where you have, normally what we do is we have a very wide range, like for ETH USDC, I have a very wide range from like 1,800 to 3,800, right? Very wide range. And then I have smaller ranges to help earn. So that wide range maybe earns like 2 to 3% tops. Maybe more, depending on the day, if there's high volume. The smaller ones will do that, will earn much bigger things. And the reason for that is you just want to be in a situation where you're earning fees regardless. The trap system, the wide trap system, works well with meme coins. So for example, I like to use Brett on Base. For Brett, you get Brett ETH, 1% on Uniswap, set a super wide range. So if I just go and buy $1,000 of Brett, I'll take like 200 of it, 250, like 25%, and I'll put into a 1% Brett ETH concentrated liquidity play at a very wide range. So while I'm holding, waiting to see if I want to do something with that, I'm earning fees on the side, right? That's the easiest way to get to accumulate your stack while you are waiting. And that's the first thing you should do. The moment you buy something like that and you have a little bit of conviction in the trade, do something like that. Now, there are places where you can automate concentrated liquidity. These are 5 of them. These are 5 that we recommend to our groups. I'll always recommend Beefy because Beefy does it for you with their what we call their CLM, or concentrated liquidity management system, with 2 clicks of the mouse. And it'll auto rebalance and auto compound your rewards. What that does unfortunately mean is that Beefy is good for long hold assets, like long assets, not short, long assets. So if you're looking for assets to go up and to the right, automated platforms are great because they're going to continue to earn and gain and get you P&L as long as those assets are continuing to appreciate. If it's going down, then they're not going to help you. It's going to make it look even worse. Anyway, these are 5 you can do. Aperture is by far the most granular, even though they've kind of had some issues. Aperture will allow you to actually set specific triggers and then only rebalance into specific ranges if those triggers get hit. Now, this is an older presentation. AI agents are a thing, especially with PancakeSwap with their AI agents. So a lot of what I've talked about fundamentally is still applicable, but look for agents to start to do more of this stuff for you in the future. So something to talk about with that. All right. So we have at least 5 strategies we talk about in Beacon with using concentrated liquidity. That was just 2 of the ones that we normally talk about. I had the pleasure of meeting Hayden Adams last year in New York at Permissionless. And I just, I shook his hand. The first thing I said was, my name is Chris. I'm a co-founder of Beacon DeFi. We do education and onboarding to help people understand how to get into DeFi and become DeFi native users. He's like, that's amazing. We need more people like you in this industry. And I took those words to heart. I was like, thank you so much. That means so much. But I wanted to say thank you, because if it wasn't for concentrated liquidity, we wouldn't be in the position where we're at, because concentrated liquidity is one of the best fundamental strategies in DeFi for you to make money on your assets. Why? Because you are profiting off the behavior of other investors. You've taken a PvP problem where you're trying to outtrade somebody to now profiting off everybody who's trading out there. So that's the beautiful thing about concentrated liquidity. Hayden Adams opened up a huge unlock for us to be able to educate and teach people how to make their assets work for them through concentrated liquidity. And now Uniswap V4 is out. It's taking a while for it to take place. Most of the liquidity in concentrated liquidity is still in V3, but that'll change as things get better, because some of the new things they have there, like hooks and singletons, to make it easier to, even to the degree where you still make yield when you're not in range. V4 is integral in a lot of these other cross-chain vault strategies that you're seeing now. But yeah, CL easy to pick up. You're like, yeah, I'm literally just taking my liquidity, I'm putting it in this range. Very simple, right? Very straightforward. But to master it, because of the nuance of the market, the way the market moves, it can be difficult to master. With that said, for people who ask, there are ways to actually get leverage on this type of stuff. I don't know any really good ones specifically on the EVM side, but DeFi Tuna on Solana is a pretty decent way to earn liquidity on concentrated liquidity pools. Not something I would personally recommend, but if you have that degen heart in you like I do, I've looked into it. And it's an option. But you can't get upset if you're not going to be making yield quickly, because it can be it's definitely a long game for concentrated liquidity. It should be a long game. Yes, you can easily rack up fees on things like meme coins and stuff like that, and we've done it to very high levels of success. But overall, concentrated liquidity should be a long-term way for you to make good yield off of assets that you hope to hold for a very long time. And again, having the power to profit off the actions of other investors is very powerful. And really, that's all that I was just going to talk about today with regards to concentrated liquidity. Yeah. Because it's one of my favorite strategies. And it's very easy to get started and just start making fees. It's amazing. Just sit there and see, you can make, holding Bitcoin and ETH and doing pools with fairly wide ranges, you'll make more just holding that position and getting fees than you will with a savings account, which is crazy, right? Because I could have like, $2,000 in a savings account at, say, Wells Fargo, and only earn a penny, maybe 2 cents every month. Whereas I'm looking at, this Bitcoin USDC pool that has $1,000 and it's earned like $8 in a year. Well, it can earn a lot more. It just depends. Again, volume equals yield, guys. Especially if you're doing concentrated liquidity. Volume equals yield. So if you definitely found value in today's stream, please like it. Please subscribe. Please follow. Send to your friends. Again, the whole point of Beat the Banks, which we do every week, every Friday at 3 p.m. We've done it since 2022. The whole point is to try and educate people, make people aware of the options that are out there to help be their own bank, self-custody, and to grow their wealth on their own terms. If you like what you heard, please check out our free group called Total Value Locked, school.com/beacon. Again, school.com/beacon. It's free to join. Check out our Start Here post. You'll hear more about Total Value Locked. We have a podcast. It's the namesake, Total Value Locked, every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern, where we have a group of we have a panel that comes on. We talk about the news of the week. We try and educate you about the news and tell you a little bit more about, this news came out. What should that mean to you as an investor, especially here in the digital asset space? And then we also introduce you to new protocols every single week with the team members or CEOs that are on there. So definitely want to help educate and bring that to the forefront. But yeah, school.com/beacon. Join us. Absolutely free. Tell your friends. And it's all about just making sure that everybody has access to the same information. Because DeFi is available to all of us. You don't need to have a financial advisor. You don't need to have a broker. Any of that stuff. It should be available to everybody who's here. So we'll see you again for more content for Beacon. Back next Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern, for another great panel working on a really cool protocol from Base Blockchain that should be on to be part of panel. So we'll see you there 1 p.m. Eastern next Wednesday. With that said, have a great weekend. Stay safe out there. If you get a hardware wallet, make sure you get the software from the actual manufacturer. That's the biggest key. And don't fall prey. Don't trust third-party app stores for any of your electronics, unless it's the actual app store for your electronic, right? So if I'm on Apple, the Mac App Store is what I would use for that. So again, just be very careful. Don't rush into things. Do your research. Look at reviews. Reach out to me if you want. I give opinions on things all the time on what I think, how things are valued and if things are a good deal or not. So feel free to reach out. We have multiple members who do that. And thanks to all those who do that. Really appreciate that. My job is here to be a resource for you every single week, every single day here in this space. So that said, see you guys next time. Take care. 07. And we say here, beacons up, banks down. Keep beating those banks, guys. Be your own bank. Embrace self-custody. the real true freedom that you deserve. Take care.